This is Dirshu Mishnah Brura as we wrap up Siman Kuf Samach Beis. We're up to Sif Tes. Yes, we are behind, but B'siyat D'Shmaya, we are learning slow and steadily, slowly making headway. Says the Mechaber in Sif Tes, when you pour the first waters on your hand, Sarich li Zoher. One has to be careful that he doesn't have left on his hand a rock or a stick or anything else. Why? Because the water is not mitaher. The reason is that water is only mitaher, water that is on the hand, and not water that's on a rock. So if there's some level of shmutz on one's hand, then the water will not be mitaher that. Continues the Mechaber, v'im shoyfech revi'as mayim kachas al yadai. Another time the Mechaber teaching that if you pour a full revi'as, einoi tzarech lizayer bekach, you don't have to worry about this either. So says the Mishnah Berurah over here, Sivkat and Samach Beis in Siftes. Apologize for the gray box around me. Sarech lizayer, someone has to be careful of the main on Israel, and if you're not, and you find in your hands after the second pouring, you find a rock, you find something on your hands. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Yadav Tameos. Your hands are tummy. And what do you got to do in any scenario? Your hands are tummy. It doesn't help just to pour more water on top of them, but rather, you have to dry them, and then pour another time. However, if you remove that which is on your hands after the first waters, and then pour on a second time, or with the second pouring, you pushed it off your hands. The Mishnah Berurah says perhaps that will help. And over here, interestingly enough, the Shartzian has a very lengthy arichos that he found. This is mashma and the Lush of the Shulchan Aruch as follows. And that's the reason why the Mishnah Berurah says that perhaps it will work. At the end, he says, Mishnah Berurah is a bit unsure about what to do in this case. Continues Bennett. Allah Mordechai. What did he find? That he as well was mistapek in this case. And Ayin Sham says the Mishnah Berurah. Even if the stick or the piece of dirt on your hands is loose, the water could go underneath it. The psul here is not because of chatzitza. Therefore, says Mishnah Berurah, the fact that it's loose will not help. Kigayni, Yav Chushim Aduma, Shelig Ubarik, Shalik Yiriskan, Tina Kisrav, case was the same din. Amna people, because the Mistabin in Shelig Ubarik, so lives Lim Nimsal Yadrach, and Natila, if you have some snow or hail in your hand, it will not basel, Vain Bir Allah, Shikam, Vizevida, till Didan, they're getting little bravias, like Yad Viyad, Les, Lan, Nafkusa, Bachol, Zak, Kilakameh. Again, we have to make an incredible list of the countless times that the Mechaber and the Mishnah Berurah continuously warn and remind us that if we pour with the Ravias, we have so many less issues. The water on the rock is nitmu machmas yadav, becomes tummy from your hands, so it's not simply the water doesn't get underneath. The little bit of water left on that rock goes back and is mitami your hands. The second waters don't help. Because it only is mitar the water in your hands, but does not mitar the water on the rock. But if you pour a vias, again, canals of ches, then that will help. And we wrap up this siman with Sif Yod. Says the Mechaber, you bring a band-aid. It's enough to wash it off your hands. We don't have a bandage. Don't touch it. Why? Because if some water got on the bandage and you touch it, what happens? It can make your hand stomach. So, number one, and Mishmur will explain this in a moment, you might not have to wash the part that has the bandage, but if that part gets wet, be careful not to touch it. Again, or part of full revius because then the water does become tamei. Then you don't have this problem. You're allowed to wash onto the ground or onto another kli. Says the Mishnah Berurah, and again, I don't know why we're having some video issues over here that were a little bit gray. But either way, let's continue. Says Dirshu, die light to pour on the rest of your hands. The case is you cannot remove the bandage because it hurts. As we have seen, therefore it's enough to pour on the rest of the hand. It's not called pouring in parts. Because it's not called parts because you can't do the other part. This is similar to one his finger is chopped. You just wash the rest of your hand. So an important rule, if you're afraid that the bandage will get ruined or your hand will get ruined, and the simple litmus test we always say is, are you going to potentially take off the bandage? If it's in pain, if it might get infected, you won't take off the bandage, then you'll let it leave it on. So wash the rest of your hand. What do? Wrap your hand in a cloth. Similar to all the cases that we saw if you do not have water, and we've spoken many times that this wrapping your hand in your cloth is not just like, oh, I don't want to go get water, so I can just not touch the bread. This only works in a scenario that you don't have water, you cannot wash, or like a case like this, you can't get the bandage wet. So you got b'ratiyah, but be careful. Don't touch the ratiyah, tzarech lemer, so you got ma'im b'ratiyah, the water shouldn't touch. V'hainu. A little bit of water gets on the bandage. Similar to the previous sip. And the second waters do not purify the water on the bandage. Then the water that's on the bandage will go back onto the hand. And in sort of a case of so what do? Either you be careful not to touch it, or Sivkat and Ayin Aleph, here it is again. Yishbach Ravias. You pour a full Ravias. Azlanit Muratza. Laimar explains the Mishnah Berurah. Even if the water afterwards falls back, we're not worried. Because this Eitzah of using Ravias is better than the first Eitzah. It's impossible to be so precise. Get your whole hand wet aside for a little bit of the bandage, and make sure that the water doesn't touch that area. And therefore, one should not rely on that. It's better to wrap up the bandage because it gets all ichi. Got to wash your hands again. If you remove the mappa, you can't eat anymore. Similarly, if the bandage is removed, to wash your hands again. Another mayim rishonim sivkat and beis. The hainu mayim shalfnei amazon lafugim mayim achronik kalam sim kuf pei aleph sev beis. Before we call it a day, we see some of the Dirshus. Note number 49. The reason why it's not called Netilas Yadaim is because you can't wash the second half, and therefore, even if most of your hand is covered, the bandage says there's some Zaman Arbach. It's enough to wash the other part of the hand because the part that's covered doesn't need to be washed. If it's not there, it's not that you're washing half of it. And continue the Shulchan Aruch. It's if one's finger is chopped off, and the makar for that, and the reason the Mishnah Berurah is from the Rosh, says the Chazon Ish. This is not a good reason. Because underneath the ratiyah that's b'oi kayamis, your finger is there. And you could actually remove the bandage. Why is it considered that your finger is not there? So the Chazon Ish is taking issue with the lumdis of the Mishnah Berurah. And the Chazon Ish adds on, since it hurts you, there are times that you're potter for Netilas Yadaim, and you only have to wrap it up. But the Rosh is machmir. You still have to wash your hands and the rest of your hand. Then you could wrap up. So Chazon Ish wants you to wrap up your whole hand Kasav v'shayne halachas. That's Rav Chaim Kanievsky. Shalchein hachazinish mitzadik sheish retia chelek biyadai. You should wrap up your whole hand. However, if you have retia on your palm, but your fingers are all good, says the Shevet HaLevi, rely on the Mekilim, as we've seen that the Shir Netilas Yadaim is just for your fingers, as we always prove from Yom Kippur. And similarly, the Divriyat of the Kleisenberger writes, if you can't wash your hands, similarly, you'll be able to wash your fingers. So in a case where the bandage is, I guess, on the back of your hand, the palm of your hand, everyone will agree that Chazin, I don't know everyone, but the Shevet HaLevi says, I think he's going, even if you're the Chazon Ish, you just pour on your fingers. But in case where the bandage is on a finger, the Chazon Ish wants you to wrap it up, or the Mishnah Brura allows you just to wash the rest of it. Let's say the other hand is fully covered with a bandage, says the Rav Pa'alim, that since you're only washing one hand, do you make a bracha? However, he says, Lamaisi, you do make a bracha, even though we normally say Savuk bracha is the hakel, but still, because the bracha is kavul, a mitzvah, so we're being makbid on the bracha, very interesting. And even though the going to a shar, okay, it gets a little bit lumdus in the bracha. Similarly, Rav Zalman Auerbach says, plaster. What do you do? You wrap up the hand. Says like we're seeing, you wash only the other hand, and he says you can make a bracha. He doesn't mention Rav Zalman if you say Netilas Yadaim, or if you're going to change the nusach of the bracha. And the reason why there's such caution over here is because it's difficult to make sure you pour right up into the bandage, and that's why we said it's a better eitzah to wash for the full revius. In Netilas Yadaim Shabbos, do you have to be worried that you're getting the bandage wet? We're not allowed to get garments wet, cause soaking garments is called laundering them. Says Rav Elyashiv, there's no issue over here for multiple reasons. It's not miskavin to kvisa. You're not worried for schita. Some Zalman actually says, interesting, you should be careful not to pour water on the bandage. Why? Because they can remove the lechluch. But again, one has to know whether it's actually cleaning the bandage or just making it more dirty. It depends on the scenario. And we will stop over here. Actually, let's just finish in note 54. We said that the Mayim Rishainim, you're allowed to wash on top of a keli. So Dirshu note 54 says it's masha, there's no ruach ra in such waters. And it's not like Mayim Achrainim, which we are careful not to wash over kelim or onto the floor because there's ruach ra on it. However, Chaim Kanievsky says that if one drinks from the leftovers of one's washing waters, it is a kasha l'shicha. And he adds on, but if you mix it with other waters, you can be mekel. So Dirshu here just pointed out an interesting thing. Even though you let it wash on top of other kelim, Rav Chaim still is warning us you should not drink those waters. We'll pick it up from Siman Kof Samoch Gimel in the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.